just have to start where we are. Okay, so these, y'all went over the 10 qualities of a teacher, right? Probably with some different names. Or not. I may have used her chart. Who knows? Subdued really does mean that they're trying to, that they have, you can see that they're practicing ethically, not just based on desire. Pacified is getting at this ability to not be easily distracted. You can see that when they're focused. They're focused. Have you ever been, I'm sure Vicki has, if you go to a teaching by Lama Zopa Rinpoche, he'll start a story. And then 47 minutes later, after some other thing that he's gone into great detail about, he'll go right back to the story. And so now, to finish that story, and you just can't believe it, partly because you've completely forgotten the story, but, he really, doesn't seem to lose track. Every now and then he might say, okay, where did I leave off, But in general, that's not his habit. In general, he can go right back, and it's us going, okay, where are we going back to? So 17 pages of notes previously, you find it. So it's interesting, these are the, so sometimes we don't recognize the qualities because we're too far behind, we don't realize how undistracted they are because we're too distracted. The realization of emptiness. You cannot know if someone else has had a realization of emptiness, this direct perception of emptiness. So we have to rely on and they're not supposed to say if they've had a realization of emptiness. It's considered a downfall to talk about your realizations, because how is anybody supposed to know you're telling the truth or not? So it would just make you confused. But you do try to investigate whether they seem to know what they're talking about, and as you learn more, if it seems to match up with what you're learning, all that stuff. You just don't. You don't make a decision at the beginning. It's over time.
Can I ask you a question?
Please.
Can you tell me more about what the meaning is behind emptiness?
Emptiness is just the word that's used in this context to describe how things actually exist. So, we've had this discussion about dependent arising.
Yes.
Okay. So the opposite side of the coin of dependent arising, so everything that exists, arose dependently on causes and conditions, right?
Yes.
Okay, this cup is also empty of existing inherently. So how it actually exists is both a dependent arising and empty of inherent existence. It's what we say its true nature is being empty of inherent existence. It does not refute or contradict or deny the fact that it's a dependent arising. Buddhas can see both at the same time. Nobody else can. So Arya beings who've had a realization of emptiness, when they are in meditative equipoise on emptiness, they see only emptiness. They do not see the dependent arising of anything. They don't see the conventional nature of things. All they're seeing is the absence of inherent existence. Slowly. The Prasangika view is just the view in this school. So of course we think it's the best. Or why would we teach it? Perseverance. That's joyous effort or enthusiasm. It doesn't mean, I don't know. It means delighting in virtue. And this willingness, that delighting in virtue kind of gives you why you can persevere. It's that, ability to recognize the good qualities of whatever you're trying to achieve, and so you do it no matter how hard it is. You just keep persevering. Okay, and this is why patience is practiced, as a perfection before joyous effort or perseverance. Because you need it in order to do this, in order to persevere. And so wealth and knowledge of Scripture, skilled in teaching, has loving kindness for students, concern. There's a real desire for the students to learn what can help them in their suffering. So this all looks familiar from last week?
Mm-hmm.
Good. All right. So how do you evaluate? You keep checking. Lineage is very helpful. You want to look at the background. Where did they study? Who are their teachers? You might want something new agey that just came around last week. But if you want the Buddha's teachings, you want to make sure the teachings have been faithfully, taught in line with what the Buddha said. So that takes, so lineage is considered very important. And it doesn't matter what school of Buddhism you're in. If you have an affinity for Zen, then you want to check up your teachers and make sure it is all, goes back and back and back to the time of the Buddha. I remember at Thich Nhat Hanh's, when someone ordains, they're given a scroll that shows each ordaining master all the way back through time. So your ordaining master was ordained by this person, who was ordained by this person, who was ordained, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on. Probably back to Master Lin Chi, who I think is the founder of that particular school of Buddhism. So, these things can give us some confidence that it's not just somebody who decided, oh, this would be a good subject to teach. I think I'll do that. Because people do it all the time. So, the plus side of being born at this time is that we do have access to an unbelievable amount of teachings and in all sorts of affordable, accessible forms of teaching. But you need to investigate, because it also means there's all sorts of fluff out there. So you really want to check up. And if you don't recognize the name, keep going, put them in Google, and keep Googling back, it's until you hit someone like, His Holiness the Dalai Lama's name is somewhere on there, Lama Zopa Rinpoche's name is somewhere in there, or people you've already established a trust for. You don't just, kind of go, well, he seems to know what he's talking about. He's got the right color, outfit, or he's got, he looks good in his hat. You really don't want to approach this that way. Because there's a commitment once you take someone on as a teacher, and because what you're agreeing to is being a student, that two-way street thing, and it's negative karma if you don't keep to that. It becomes a negativity. It's sort of like and this isn't just about your spiritual teacher, it's a negativity to disparage your parents who taught you so much. Now there are certain circumstances where your parents, might not have been decent people, but if they were decent people and reasonable parents, they taught you how to survive. They made you survive. You wouldn't be alive now if it wasn't for them. So to not be respectful towards them is a negativity. And the same is true of your teachers, so it's kind of like that. So, you definitely want to check out how they seem to treat them, interact with their students, other students, how the students talk about them. That's not always the most reliable. Does a teacher exhibit patience and compassion and energy? And what kind of example are they to others? So this is sort of a starting point. Do they practice what they preach? Do you want to become like them? Do they have qualities that you would like to develop in yourself? And then do they have the 10 qualities of a Mahayana guru? You know. So as you learn more, then you can investigate more deeply. Now this doesn't mean you don't, you know, before you take someone as your teacher, that you don't have respect or listen or show up to class, all those things, you know, but it's a different level of commitment. Making sense? Yes, please.
So, like, if you do decide on a teacher, what is the practice with, you know, meeting with them, or, you know, how many times a week, or, you know, generally? Like,
Generally, it's said that it's a good idea to live on the next mountain from your teacher and not spend too much time with them.
Really?
Didn't expect that, did you?
No.
I know, that's really shocking. What do you mean? But that's what they mean. The point is, reflect on the teachings. You receive teaching, and you know, maybe when you're ready to be able to say it back to them verbatim, maybe it's time to meet with them and ask your questions. And that sounds ridiculous, but if there's a real truth to that, is the work has to come from your side. It's you that needs to transform. So, you know, it's just like when your parents said, you know, when you went, how do you spell dictionary? Go look it up, you know? It's that kind of thing. It's that, don't ask the question if you haven't done any work. You really need to do the work. Read it, you look up the words in a glossary somewhere, and you try to understand it. You try to find where it doesn't make sense to you, though, because those are the questions you want to bring to the teacher. Where you say, I'm sorry, but I can't put this in context with the other teachings I've heard. That's really important. This is why I'm always asking pop quizzes, you know. It's like, it's really important, because this is how you'll discover, you'll really get it to sink in. Oh, I'm starting to see how the pieces of the puzzle fit together. It's from really examining the teachings. So that you can, you know, it all starts usually with a question. You know, you kind of go, I don't know about that, so you try to answer your own questions, and then those that you just can't answer, or you can't even, you know, you want to do a lot of work on your own. Now, at the beginning, of course, you don't know what you don't know. So even more important to read, you know, and to keep reading. And, you know, and check with other students. Do you know what this means when it says this? You know, and if there are no students around you that know any more than you do, then yeah, you're going to need to talk to the teacher. You know, so it's just, but it's not something where they spoon feed you this information, if that makes sense. Because that won't do the work. Because it's not about just a quick answer. It's about internaling the teachings in a way that makes sense to you, so that you'll actually want to change your actions of the way you think and the way you speak and what you do. And that's only going to come through, you know, your own processing of this and deep reflection. Does that make sense? And so Dharma discussion is really important. You know, really talking about it with each other, and so that new questions arise, and not assuming that the other person who seems to know a little more than you is right. And that's not going to help, really. It's just sort of like, oh, okay, I haven't looked at it that way, and so that just is another thing to put on your list to kind of start working with. You know, because they may not be correct in their interpretation of the teachings, but it's still, it helps you. You know, it keeps you thinking about it and questions coming up. So the more you can talk about it with each other, you know, the more you're going to find new questions to explore. Make sense? Oh, okay. And they really do say that, about better to live on the next mountain. Okay, the qualities of the student. They need to be open-minded. You need common sense and intelligence. In other words, you need to have a little bit of confidence in your own wisdom. You have the ability to reason things. And you want to take that mind when you're studying the teachings or reflecting on them. You You want to question. You want to pretty much question every sentence you read. And just kind of go, why would that be true? And that helps you, you know, develop your own reasons for whether you want to follow this path or not. If it makes sense to you or not. Or if you just want to go, I'm going to have to try that out because I have no clue. So, you do need a strong interest in the Dharma. What does this mean, you think?
So you have to want to learn and be involved.
Right. I mean, so, you know, one of the rules in Buddhism is that teachers are not supposed to teach you anything unless you ask them 3 times. This is the reason. You need to demonstrate interest in it. We assume if you show up here, you have an interest in it. You know, so it's this, you know, it's this, because some people want to listen to a spiritual path to argue about it. To say, oh, well, mine's better than yours. And that's not going to help them, it's not going to help you. There's no point in it, it's a waste of time. So you really want to know. So it's like, say someone asked you about, oh, I hear you've been showing up at that Buddhist center. You know, why? You really, you really want to ask, what is it you'd like to know? No, you want to find out if they just want to start an argument with you, because there's no purpose in that. It's, you know, studying the Dharma is not about convincing others that you're on the path or the best path. There are many paths. There are many kinds of people. There are many paths. So, but you know, sometimes really people, you know, do want to. I mean, I had a ridiculous discussion one time on the, you know, walkway next to a beach in Australia, you know. And it really came down to that. It was this discussion where somebody wanted to show me that I was so on the wrong track. And I set myself up for it, for walking around like this. But, you know, but it takes some skill to be able to just disentangle yourself from that. Because it's not good karma for anybody to be disparaging anybody's religious tradition. You know? So you don't want to be involved in that. Yeah.
So it's about the motivation, your
Yeah.
interest.
Yeah.
Motivation.
You know, now somebody might be asking because they're concerned for you. And that's different than trying to start an argument. Now it may end up there, but it's like, you know, it's really about being able to say, well, I hear some concern in your voice. What is it that you're concerned about? Like I know lots of people who were Christians and now are Buddhists, and they have a much deeper confidence in Jesus Christ than they ever did before. Just as from the point of view of this person must have been at least a bodhisattva, if not a Buddha. So it's, you know, so you really want to kind of find out what are your concerns. You know. So anyway, but sometimes we really want to change someone, and so we're the instigator of that. You know, and so you want to watch that. It's not a good way to introduce someone to the Dharma. You could turn them away from the Dharma for lifetime after lifetime. So it's, you know, there's just no point in it. And all that enthusiasm you have when you first meet the Dharma and it's working for you, remember it doesn't work for everyone. You know, so it's really important to go slowly. Yes, please.
In which situation you would like to change something?
When you would really like to change someone, good luck with that.
Because that's what I understood you say. You said sometimes you want to change.
Yes, and that's not a good idea. Yeah, it's never a good idea. Because we can't change other people. We can model for them what works for us. You know, if they ask us for help, we certainly can, you know, share from experience what's worked for us or what we see, you know, that kind of thing. But trying to change someone else, just like, I mean, think about how hard it is to change yourself. And you have all the information. You know, so thinking you can do that for someone else is like the height of arrogance. You know, so we want to recognize that. You know, we never know how things are going to turn out for someone. You know, I mean, how many of the worst experiences you've had turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to you because you learned so much from it? You know? So it's just like, we can be really,
Yeah.
you know, we can become someone else's obstacle for growth. It's not easy. And I mean, of course, being a parent makes it, 75 billion times more difficult. But there's a point at which we have to just really understand there's only so much we can do. Everybody has their own karma. So respecting the Dharma. When you think of Dharma as, basically, first of all, the word Dharma with a little d just means phenomena in Sanskrit. So it's just everything. D with a capital D, Dharma with a capital D, is this idea that it's the spiritual teachings of the Buddha. But it really, at its heart, it means a path that takes you to the truth. And there are many ways to get to the truth, It's like our sense of, this is that inner wisdom we're trying to develop to where, and of course it changes over time. We do the best we can. We have a certain level of inner wisdom and we want to follow that. And then when we learn something new, we want to integrate that within what we already understand, so that it grows. But it's about, so respecting each other's truths, which doesn't mean there are more than one truth or something. I don't mean it quite like that. But it's like, really respecting the Dharma includes respecting everyone's spiritual tradition. You may not agree with it. You don't have to agree with it. But showing, respect for it. Any questions about this?
Is
Yes.
that equanimity that in the teachings?
I think it's more, well, I don't know, maybe. It depends on your mind. But I think it's this idea that, to me, this is just the way I think about it. So it's not in the teachings. This is my reflection on it. Is that enlightened beings will use whatever tools they can to get you headed in the direction of no more suffering. So that's going to take many different forms because we have many different dispositions of mind. So, judging each other, what works for other people as not good enough or, is, disrespectful. And not being curious about other people, what's working for them, that's, limiting your knowledge. And also, if you become a teacher, you're going to want to try to be able to have common ground with everybody, not just the people who sound most like you. And in this particular tradition, all the teachers don't sound like you. They have a very different accent. Hence why it's called Tibetan Buddhism. So. I can tell you the first time I asked a question in class with Geshe Tashi Tsering, I used the word path, big mistake for a Southerner. He just couldn't get over it. He sat there for like 3 minutes going, path? What's a path? Path? But really what he was telling me is, you've been here like 3 weeks. Wait a while before you ask a question. He didn't answer the question at all. Didn't even go there. Just didn't go there. Did I ask another question? Oh yeah, maybe 3 years later. But, So there you go. One of those shining moments. All right. It was really funny though. An attentive mind, a good character, and a kind heart. So what's this point about an attentive mind?
Staying awake.
Yeah, that helps. One, let's try to stay awake.
Non-judgment?
Non-judgment, that open-mindedness thing of just sort of listening, without judgment. That's always good, the unbiased mind. But like, it really, it's like, if you're gonna show up to class and not listen, whose time are you wasting? everybody's. It's like, you know, so, and that doesn't, obviously, we're going for, it's a practice, not perfection, you know, so, but this is one of those intentions, when you set an intention at the beginning, to really try to remember, I want to listen. I'm going to do my best every time I realize I'm not listening, to try to start listening again. And sometimes that means doing things like eating before you come, like bringing a notebook to write down things, you know, so that because you're not going to remember everything, you know, so taking notes is you know, although the Tibetans can't stand it because they're from an oral tradition, so they don't understand why you can't just retain it. But if you didn't come from an oral tradition, it's harder to just retain it. But you also don't want to take notes to the expense of listening, which is a challenge. So, but your main intention is to try to listen. And a good character and a kind heart. This is getting back to that idea, you're not here to start an argument. You're here because you genuinely want to develop your good heart. You want to develop your good qualities, you know. It's not just about, I don't know, picking up dates. Aryadeva, who wrote the 400 verses into something that's so helpful. Good, Dave. All right. Aryadeva was okay, it's just not there tonight. He's someone's spiritual son. I really don't remember. Okay. So, if we don't have these characteristics of being unbiased, intelligent, diligence, then the influence of our own faults becomes that even a really pure teacher who has all the qualities, we won't see that. What we'll see is faults. And that's coming from our side. Okay, who can Google Aryadeva for me? Whose phone is out of their pocket? Let's see.
John's on.
1, 2, okay, that's enough.
Venerable Tendrin,
Yes.
I think this has to do with being able to recognize the teacher, right?
Yep.
Because obviously the more pure the student is, the more they can see the legitimate qualities.
Why?
Why? Because there would be less cloudiness.
Right, and that's right. You know, when we use this phrase of being obscured, our negative emotions are obscuring wisdom from appearing, our negative states of mind, our, you know, all of those things are, you know, they are the clouds in the sky. You know, we can't see through them. So who's Aryadeva?
Nagarjuna.
Thank you. Nagarjuna's spiritual son, along with, there's a second one, Vasubandhu, maybe?
Back to Google.
Stump the Googlers. All right. Nagarjuna being the Indian master that this tradition and the Zen tradition both revere as, you know, the person who understood emptiness. And they have two different views. The Zen tradition has a different view on the Tibetan view, but they hold the same teacher as their guide. So this should teach you something.
Do they debate?
They did back then. You know, when in the Buddha's time, all the different sects of Buddhism, all the different opinions of the students were being debated all the time. And then when it left, the difficulty is when it left India, like Nalanda University in India, and went to these different countries, they became isolated from each other. So it's like, you know, one group of students who thought this view ends up in China, and then Chan is born, you know, it's you know. And so they didn't have debates then. They had some way back when. There was a debate between a monk from China and in Tibet, and they had different views, and of course Tibet feels they won the debate, and so, you know, they kicked the guy out. Or, you know, back then the idea was that if you lose a debate, then you have to go with your opponent's point of view. So, Yep.
So what do the monks that are, say, in the same tradition debate about?
they debate all of these things. This, you know, in the Tibetan tradition, they, the students have to go a graduated path. They start by, they have to take a certain point of view, the lowest Buddhist school point of view, the least subtle is how they put it, the least subtle, and they have to debate everything from their point of view. And then when they graduate from that, they go to the next school, and they debate everything from that point of view. And then they go to the next school, like Mind Only, and then they go to, you know, the middle way schools, and then, you know, so it's like that. So by the time they're through, like with Geshe studies, they know all the different schools inside and out. Now, you can't say that what they're debating is the same as Zen because they've been separated from that country, but it's what, you know, what existed at the time of the Buddha, all the different, there were 18 schools pretty much that survived the Buddha.
So I'm a little confused, so say if there's something to debate about, is it really for the student that is debating to counteract that particular train of thought, or are they, yeah?
A successful debate, the purpose of debate is to bring the person you're debating to let go of wrong view. So if they don't change their mind, you cannot win the debate.
Is it a setup in that situation, or they actually do,
They debate.
both actually believe in a different way of thinking, or are they just sort of setting the student up to teach the student how to debate?
Have you seen me go there? No. Your questions are getting a little too specific. I'm not going to be able to answer those
Okay.
questions. I do know what the system is,
Yeah.
but I don't speak Tibetan, and they really don't teach debate very well without the Tibetan. They're trying to at Travasta Abbey. They're teaching debate in English at the moment.
Yeah.
What they do is, though, they investigate the teachings. So they read the teachings and go, I have a question about that, and then they debate it. That's how it all starts.
Okay.
But if you're in a certain school, you know, if you're in a certain grade,
Yeah.
you've got to take
Debate.
the lower school's point of
Okay.
view. And
Okay.
then only when they feel you've mastered that can you go to the next, which is a more subtle view. And then you go to the next, which is an even more subtle view. I mean, the views when you get to the higher schools, the differences are so subtle that I can pretend to know what they mean, but it's not true. I mean, it's just like the words look different, and I can think that they're different, but it's a really subtle difference. You know, so it's, you know, so they're really trying to be able to discern the difference,
Yeah.
but at least they're doing it in, you know, but again, it's an exercise in study and investigation, but they all start with a question. They just discuss, they have a Dharma discussion, and somebody says,
Okay.
well, I think this, and then a debate arises.
Okay.
That's how it starts.
Got it. Okay.
They're just restricted on whose point of view can they take. You know,
Yeah.
so they have to know the tenets of the different schools. Yeah, they know a lot. But they memorize their text. They're not allowed to bring text to the debate board yard. They're not allowed to bring text to the classrooms. So every day, for 6 days a week, for 11 months out of the year, they have to memorize 2 sides of one of those yellow folio sheets of their text, and because that's what's going to be taught in class that day. So they memorize a text every single day. So that's a tremendous advantage, because they can they can quote text all over the place. And that really helps them when they're investigating and they're trying to put all the pieces together and find where they think doesn't make sense and so. But again, people who, like I said 2 weeks ago, you know, just because you've succeeded in graduating and becoming a Geshe, in particular Geshe Lharampa, which is the highest level of Geshe, which is who Lama Zopa Rinpoche usually brings over here to teach, is a Lharampa Geshe, doesn't mean that they have experiences. That means they were excellent students, they excellent debaters, they know the material really well, but they may not have spent a whole lot of time meditating, reflecting on it, implementing the teachings. And so you can't just assume, you can assume they have more spiritual knowledge than you by heap leaps, you know, just by volumes. But, you know, that's not enough to say they must have all the qualities, because it's not true. So you don't want to set yourself up that way.
Well, isn't knowledge without experience not very useful?
It's where you start.
Right.
Meditation without that knowledge isn't very useful.
Yeah, I think meditation without the knowledge is more useful than knowledge
The
without
teachings do
meditation.
not say that. I can, you know, that's fine, but that is not what the teachings say. They say there's no point in meditating if you don't know the teachings, because what are you meditating on? Because we can sit there all day long and investigate our minds, but if we don't have something to analyze it against, then we're just going to do the same old thing we've been doing since beginningless time, and we will not become enlightened. We need to challenge the way we think with a different perspective. That's the point of understanding the teachings. And when you meditate, you want to be able to have something to, because if it was just by time, we'd all be enlightened. We've had time. If the teachings are correct, we've had since beginningless time. So it's really about not just all the skills you need. You do need the skill of concentration, of, you know, single-pointed concentration. You do need the skill of being able to analyze, that's why human rebirth is considered so valuable, because our brain is sophisticated enough to allow analysis. You know, we have that skill. So, you know, so we want to take those things and then we want to put some different kind of information, not just what we've experienced so far, because we want to, you know, analyze our experiences from a different perspective so that we can get on the right track. Does that make sense? It's hard. You know? But it's like the Zen students. You know, you go to a Zen center